You ever have that gnawing feeling? Like a splinter you can't see, but you know it's there. That's how it started for me. Just a whisper of doubt, barely audible over the noise of everyday life. But the thing about whispers is, if you listen closely enough, they tell you everything. I don't consider myself a paranoid man. In fact, I've built a reputation on calm, a measured mind in an unstable world. As a finance director for a mid-sized firm in Colorado, I pride myself on logic, facts, numbers. Emotions don't belong on a balance sheet. But even I couldn't ignore the subtle shift that began in my wife, Claire. It started small. The way her phone was always face down. How she jumped when it buzzed. The sudden girls' nights with friends I'd never met. At first, I chalked it up to midlife restlessness. We'd been married for 9 years, with a mortgage, a golden retriever named Max, and a rhythm that had long since traded passion for routine. But still, I trusted her. Until the day I didn't. What changed? She left her laptop open. It was a Tuesday night, and she'd stepped out for wine with her coworker, again. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just wanted to order Thai food from the bookmark tab. But the last tab wasn't DoorDash. It was her Google timeline. I didn't even know she had it turned on. Her location history showed she hadn't been at Bar Vino, as she claimed. She'd spent 2 hours parked outside an address I recognized, one I couldn't forget. Jackson Miller's place. My colleague. My friend. We worked together for 7 years. Shared late-night project deadlines, Sunday golf rounds, beers after work. He knew Claire, had been to our house, barbecued in my backyard. I trusted him like a brother. I stared at the screen, the address blinking at me like a neon sign. Claire came home a little past 11 p.m., cheeks flushed, breath minty. I asked how the wine was. She smiled too easily, told me girls' night was fun, and slipped off to shower. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I got smart. I spent the next 2 weeks collecting data, not anger. I installed a discrete GPS tracker in her car, legal in Colorado since the car was jointly owned. I logged into our phone bill account and began cross-referencing numbers. Jackson's number popped up more times than I could count, often after midnight. Next, I installed a small camera in our living room, concealed inside a decorative air purifier. Just in case. I told her I had to go to Chicago for a 2-day work trip. In reality, I checked into a nearby Marriott and monitored the tracker from my laptop. Sure enough, her car left the house around 7:30 p.m. and parked 2 blocks from Jackson's apartment. I waited. At 9:12 p.m., the camera in our living room activated. They didn't even go upstairs. Claire and Jackson walked into my home like it belonged to them. She giggled. He dropped his coat on my chair. They kissed in the kitchen, her arms wrapped around his neck like they were high school sweethearts. I didn't cry. I downloaded the footage, time-stamped and labeled it, then forwarded it to my lawyer. I had already started working with a discreet legal team out of Denver known for high-profile divorces. My attorney, Cameron Hawes, was ruthless in court but knew when to play it cool. She advised me to wait. Don't let emotion cloud your positioning, she said. She was right. The next day, I went to work like nothing happened. Jackson had the nerve to greet me with that same smug nod, like we were still on the same team. I nodded back. He didn't know the storm was already rolling in. Later that week, my firm hosted a charity gala, black tie, press coverage, all of it. I made sure Claire and I were both on the guest list. Jackson too. It was going to be a night to remember. Not for what we raised, but for what I would expose. Not yet though. Not until I had one final piece of leverage. That weekend, I took Max for a walk and, accidentally, bumped into one of Claire's coworkers. We chatted. I asked about the office vibe lately. She looked uncomfortable. Well, to be honest, people talk. About Claire and Jackson. It's not subtle. There it was. Public perception. My lawyer said that changed everything. Workplace affairs within the same company. HR nightmare. Potential grounds for termination, especially when one party is married, and the other is in a position of influence. Jackson was up for a partner role. One leak, and he'd be finished. I had everything I needed now. Still, I stayed quiet. The night of the gala was coming, and I planned to serve the coldest dish in town. A man learns patience when he chooses revenge over rage. That's the thing most people don't understand. The world expects fireworks, shouting matches, thrown glasses. But real power, real justice, is in the silence. The gala was held at the Aspen Hall downtown. Big event. Gold-draped tables, crystal centerpieces, champagne flutes lined up like soldiers. The kind of night people remember, usually for the silent auctions and the governor's toast. Not this time. I arrived first. Black suit. Fresh shave. Looked like the husband everyone admired. Claire walked in 20 minutes later, dressed in emerald green. Always did know how to make an entrance. If you didn't know any better, you'd say she was glowing. I greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and a whisper. You look beautiful, Claire. You always have. She blinked. I could tell something about my tone didn't sit right with her. Jackson showed up shortly after, arm in arm with a junior associate from legal. A red herring. Smart move. Probably trying to deflect attention, assuming anyone was paying attention. But they were. Trust me, I made sure of that. The night flowed like clockwork. I played my part. The loving husband. The charming executive. Claire smiled a lot, laughed even more, but I caught her eyes drifting toward Jackson a few times too many. Guilt has a way of pulling the gaze. By 9 p.m., we reached the evening's highlight, a video tribute for our firm's anniversary. A short reel of company milestones, community projects, awards. Except, I'd made a small addition. 30 seconds before the end, the screen flickered. The music faded. Then came the footage. No faces at first. Just a timestamp. 8:42 p.m. Tuesday night. Our living room. Then her voice, you always know what to say. Jackson, you always come back for more. They kissed. Then the screen went black. Gasps. Some laughter. Murmurs rippling like a wave through the crowd. Claire froze. Jackson turned the color of raw chalk. His date looked like she'd seen a ghost. I stepped up to the mic. Apologies. That wasn't supposed to play, but I suppose some things just reveal themselves, don't they? I said, voice steady as concrete. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy your evening. Silence. The kind that feels like someone emptied the air out of the room. I left the stage without looking back. Claire followed me to the courtyard behind the venue. Her heels clacked against the tile like a ticking clock. You did this? She asked, voice trembling. I didn't even look at her. No. You did this. I just provided the lighting. It wasn't like that, she rushed on, tears forming. I made a mistake, a horrible. Spare me, Claire. I turned to her. I know everything. The phone records. The GPS. The text messages you deleted but forgot were backed up to the cloud. You weren't careful, you were arrogant. She stepped closer, reaching out. Please. We can fix this. I'll do anything, we can go to therapy. Jackson's career. I cut her off. It's gone. He'll be lucky if he's still on payroll by Monday. HR's been briefed. And as for you, well, I hope your writing portfolio is strong. Because your reputation isn't. The color drained from her face. Then came the tears. What about us? About everything we've built? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Cold. Controlled. You built something with Jackson. Burn with it. I walked away before she could respond. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to a quiet cabin I'd rented for the weekend. Built a fire. Poured a glass of bourbon. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because I'd won. Because I'd stopped losing. There's a moment after a storm, when the thunder fades and the air turns sharp and still, that people mistake for peace. It's not. It's the pause before the reckoning. Monday came fast. Emails flooded HR before the office lights even flickered on. Screenshots. Gossip. Someone had filmed part of the gala reveal on their phone, and by morning, the video had made its way onto Slack channels and group texts like a virus. By 10 a.m., Jackson was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. By 3 p.m., Claire was strongly encouraged to take personal leave. Indefinitely. I didn't lift a finger. Didn't need to. Turns out, betrayal sells better than stocks. Cameron Hawes and I met that afternoon in her office overlooking downtown. She wore a navy suit, hair pulled back, voice all business. I've never seen a cleaner setup, she said, flipping through the folders I'd provided. You've got text logs, footage, a workplace conflict of interest, and a public incident to back it all. She's going to have a hard time spinning this. What's next? I asked. She leaned back. We file for divorce this week. We cite infidelity, reputational damage, and emotional distress. You request full asset protection, limited alimony, and a clean split on retirement accounts. You'll keep the house, since we'll argue she violated the moral clause in your prenup. Custody's not on the table since there are no kids. I nodded, silent. Cameron studied me. You okay? I'm fine, I lied. Claire tried calling that night. 5 times. Then came the messages. Please, let's talk. We can still work through this. You blindsided me, but I understand why. Don't throw everything away. I still love you. The desperation came fast once the denial wore off. By the end of the week, she showed up at my doorstep, no makeup, puffy eyes, voice hoarse from rehearsing the apology she'd probably practiced in the mirror. Please just talk to me, she said, clutching the sleeves of her cardigan like it was the last thing holding her together. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me. This isn't a conversation, Claire, I said calmly. This is closure. She sniffled. What we had, it was real. You can't just erase that. You're right, I said. I can't erase it. But I can stop letting it define me. She tried one last time. I didn't mean for it to go that far. It was a mistake. I met her eyes. No. Spilling coffee is a mistake. Sneaking around with someone I trusted for months, that's a choice. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She just stood there, drowning in a silence I no longer had to fill. I handed her a manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, already served, along with a cover letter from Cameron. I'll let my lawyer handle everything else. Goodbye, Claire. And I walked back inside. That night, I sat in the living room with Max curled at my feet, the house quiet for once. My phone buzzed, a message from Cameron. Jackson resigned. No severance. PR nightmare. Claire's lawyer reached out, but we're holding firm. I turned the phone over, face down. Just like Claire used to. But for me, there were no secrets left. Just freedom. You can kill a man's trust, but not his instinct. And my instinct told me, this wasn't over. I'd been quiet, respectable, even, in the eyes of mutual friends and colleagues. That bothered Claire. A lot. She expected rage. Public chaos. Something she could point to and say, "See? He's unstable." But I never gave her that. What I did give her was space. And silence. And it turns out, silence is the one thing a manipulator can't tolerate, it's the mirror they can't fog up with excuses. That's when the second phase began. 2 weeks post-gala, Claire broke her silence by way of strategy, a social media rebrand. Suddenly her feed lit up with sunshine and smoothie photos, yoga poses with captions like, "Healing is not linear." And then the kicker, a filtered selfie with Max, my dog. Some bonds can't be broken. Even when everything else is falling apart. The comments section exploded. Old friends. College sorority sisters. A few co-workers who hadn't seen the video. "Stay strong, Claire. You're radiant. People make mistakes. You deserve happiness." No one knows the full story. That last one. That was the seed she was planting. She wanted to control the narrative. Cameron called me that same afternoon. "She's playing the sympathy card," she said flatly. Not a surprise. This happens when they realize reputation is slipping. She's not talking directly about the affair, but she wants people to assume you were the bad guy. "Let her," I replied. "I've got more patience than she does." And I did. Because this wasn't about scoring points, it was about letting her play her hand, then flipping the table. Meanwhile, Jackson tried to crawl out of the rubble. Rumor had it he'd hired a crisis consultant. He issued a LinkedIn post vaguely referencing a sabbatical for family reasons. Word around town said his marriage was in shambles, his wife had left with their daughter and filed for sole custody. His professional circle, tight-knit as it was, began to quietly freeze him out. Funny how fast the world turns on a man with no spine. Then came Claire's final gambit. She sent me a handwritten letter. Pages long. No return address, but I knew her handwriting like the back of my hand. It opened like a eulogy. "I know I've lost the right to speak freely in your life, but I need to tell you the truth. Not just the truth of what I did, but why I did it." She tried to spin it. Loneliness. Feeling unseen. The slow erosion of passion. "Jackson," she wrote, "wasn't planned, but reminded me I was still alive." Then she slipped in this line. "Maybe we could still find our way back, after time, after therapy." And that's when I smiled. Because I knew what was coming next. A week later, I hosted a small get-together at my place. Just a handful of close friends, nothing formal. Claire was still legally tied to me at that point, but she wasn't invited, and she knew it. I posted a single photo the next day, me and a few friends on the back patio. Laughing. Relaxed. The caption? "Healing is quiet work." But eventually, it shows. No hashtags. No subtweets. Just one visible shift in the balance of perception. Claire's silence after that. Deafening. By the end of the month, her lawyer reached out again. She wanted to settle. Suddenly, the woman who once insisted on half of everything was now open to reasonable terms. She asked if we could mediate privately. No court drama. Cameron smirked when she relayed the message. "Her reputation's bleeding," she said. "She wants to stop the hemorrhaging." "Let her," I said. "But not before I finish what I started. Because forgiveness isn't something you give to someone else. It's something you earn by facing the storm you made, and standing in it. Revenge isn't served cold. It's served precisely, layered, deliberate, and most importantly, patient." By the time Claire's lawyer requested a private settlement, I already knew I wasn't walking into that room to negotiate. I was walking in to collect. Cameron and I arrived at the mediation office on a clear Friday morning. Neutral ground, mahogany conference table, bottled water, polite receptionists. Claire sat across from me in a tailored blouse and a careful expression. The kind you wear when you're trying not to look like you're losing. She looked older. Not in the physical sense. Just, weathered. Like she'd finally realized she wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. Her lawyer, some overly tan suburban type in a flashy suit, opened the meeting with a thin smile. Our goal today is to avoid further conflict. Claire is prepared to be reasonable if both parties approach this in good faith. Cameron didn't blink. Reasonable began the day you stopped lying. We're well past that. Claire glanced at me. I just want to move on peacefully. For both of us. I slid a thick folder across the table. Then sign. Inside, revised settlement terms. Full retention of the house, both vehicles, and the investment account we built together. No alimony. She'd keep her personal savings, her freelance royalties, and what was left from her parents' inheritance. Fair. More than fair. She hesitated. You want the house? I built that house, I said. Every tile. Every screw. You and Jackson made a mess in it. I'm the one who cleans it up. Her lawyer leaned in. With respect, your client is asking a lot. Courts may also see footage of her affair, text logs from her work phone, and witness statements from her peers. And you know as well as I do, Colorado's an equitable distribution state, but adultery still plays into judicial discretion. Cameron dropped that line like a match on dry grass. Claire's jaw tightened. She stared at the paper for a long moment, then signed. One signature. That was it. 12 years undone with a flick of the pen. As we left the building, Cameron turned to me. You handled that with more discipline than most men I've seen in your shoes. I nodded. That's the thing about storms. You don't fight them. You outlast them. But the fallout wasn't finished. A week after the settlement, I got a call from an old contact at Jackson's former firm. Not gossip. Just a heads up. His wife's going scorched earth, he said. She found out everything. He's being sued for marital misconduct and emotional distress. Apparently, she'd had her own investigator. And unlike me, she didn't care about being quiet. Word is she leaked the footage from the gala to several clients, discreetly, but intentionally. In the corporate world, optics are everything. Jackson's consulting contracts began drying up. Invitations stopped coming. A man can survive scandal. He can't survive silence. As for Claire, she moved into a rental across town. Tried launching a personal blog, some half-baked healing journey nonsense. It flopped. Turns out, people can smell artifice when they've already seen the truth. Meanwhile, I started putting my house back together. New paint. New furniture. Hell, I even built a fire pit out back. Max likes to lay beside it at night. Life felt still. For the first time in years. One evening, while sipping whiskey by the flames, I got a message from Claire. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then turned it off. Not out of anger. Out of peace. There's a strange silence that comes after everything is over. Not the silence of loss, but of clarity. The kind where you can finally hear yourself think again. And when you do, the voice in your head sounds different. Stronger. Sharper. Wiser. It had been 3 months since the ink dried on the divorce. I hadn't seen Claire since the day she signed the settlement papers. No texts. No calls. Just the occasional echo of her name through mutual acquaintances who still hadn't picked a side. Not that it mattered. I wasn't in the business of controlling opinions. Just outcomes. The last thread to cut was financial. We had a joint retirement account that took longer than expected to untangle due to some bureaucratic red tape. I scheduled the final meeting with the bank myself. It felt fitting. Claire showed up late, old habit. She looked thinner, not in a healthy way. Her smile was cautious, maybe even hopeful. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come," she said. I shrugged. "I finish what I start." The banker processed the paperwork without small talk. Efficient, impersonal, exactly how I wanted it. When it was done, Claire stood, hesitating. "Do you mind if we talk? Just 5 minutes?" I could have said no. But I nodded. We walked to the cafe across the street and sat outside. She stirred her tea like she was waiting for permission to speak. Eventually, she said, "I know I can't undo anything. And I'm not here to beg. I just needed you to know something." I looked at her but said nothing. She continued. "You were the best man I've ever known. I ruined that. I let something small and selfish turn into something that swallowed everything good in our lives. I see it now. I've been in therapy. Real therapy, not just talking in hashtags online." She smiled weakly, trying to lighten it. I didn't return the smile. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said. "But this isn't redemption. You don't get to rewrite what happened just because you found the vocabulary for it." She winced, but nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. "For not destroying me. You could've." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. Because becoming vindictive would have made me like you, and I hated who you became." She looked like she might cry. But I wasn't moved. Not anymore. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I stood up, placed a 20 on the table for her drink, and said the last thing I'd ever say to her. "Some storms don't pass. They just change direction. Goodbye, Claire." Driving home, I took the long route. Windows down. Max's head hanging out the passenger side like a kid seeing the world for the first time. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. And that was better. Over the next few weeks, I made changes. Not dramatic ones, just the kind that matter. I started working out again, more than just maintenance. I met friends for dinner without checking the time. I booked a hiking trip for myself in Montana, something I hadn't done since before I got married. The house stopped smelling like memories. It smelled like me again. One Saturday morning, I stood in the kitchen making breakfast. Max sat patiently by the counter. I poured 2 mugs of coffee out of habit, then paused, and poured one back. Old habits die. New ones don't need replacing. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like a Sunday morning where no one expects anything from you. The smell of fresh coffee, the soft creak of hardwood floors under your bare feet, the way the air feels cleaner, because for once, you're not holding your breath. It took a while, but I got there. 3 months had passed since my last conversation with Claire. Legally and emotionally, we were finished. Jackson, from what I heard, moved out of state. Rumors swirled about a failed consulting startup and a messy custody battle he was losing badly. Couldn't say I felt sorry for him. As for me, I was no longer surviving. I was building. My days became mine again. I took a job consulting part-time for a company that actually gave a damn about work-life balance. I started hiking with Max twice a week. He seemed younger, freer, like he could sense I was finally okay. I even reconnected with a few old friends. The kind I hadn't seen much during the marriage because Claire always had a reason why they were too much, too loud, or not a good influence. Turns out, those were my people. One night, after a poker game with the guys, I found a letter tucked into my mailbox. No stamp. No envelope. Just a folded page with my name on the front. Claire. I stood on the porch for a moment before opening it. I thought about throwing it away. Burning it, maybe. But curiosity always had a way of sneaking in through the cracks. Inside, it read. I know I said goodbye already. But this isn't for you, it's for me. I wanted you to know that I've started volunteering at a center for women rebuilding their lives. Some of them were victims. Some were the ones who caused damage. All of us are trying to do better. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that when you think of me, it's not with hatred anymore. I am sorry. I always will be. Claire. No manipulation. No request. Just, a page. And strangely, I felt nothing reading it. No surge of anger. No sting of regret. She was right, it wasn't for me. And I was okay with that. That weekend, I drove up to Estes Park. Left my phone in the glove box. Spent the day surrounded by pines, sun bleeding through the trees. Max chased birds, splashed in the creek. I sat on a rock, watching the current slide past me, steady and unbothered. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't think about what had been taken from me. I thought about what I'd taken back. Liberation doesn't come when they leave. It comes when you no longer care why they did. When your peace doesn't depend on their apology. When your future no longer includes their shadow. When your home, your heart, your headspace, are finally, undeniably, your own. That's freedom. That's the quiet storm, passing.